So hello, everyone. I'm Livia Pinay, and this is Digital Design and Sustainable Futures, the Data, a webinar from the Digital Fashion Group Academy. The session is part of a series of webinars exploring what ways digital design can help us to make a more sustainable fashion industry. And today we will investigate how we can do it through data. And for this, we gather together this amazing group of panelists, pioneers in our industry that have been changing fashion as we know. So I would like to ask Julie, Jonathan, and Beth to join us. So we have from Paris, Julie Pont. She is the Fashion and Creative Director at Heuritech. Hi, Julie.
Hello, everyone. Hi, Livia.
Thank you so much for being here. And from London, or near to London, we have Jonathan Chippindale, founder and CEO of Holition. Hi, Jonathan.
Hi, Livia. Hi, everybody. Nice to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you. And from California, Beth Isponet, co-founder and Chief of Product and Executive Chairman at Unspan. Hi, Beth.
Hi, Olivia. Hi, everyone. I'm really excited to take notes on the other panelists here. Really excited to learn.
Thank you so much for being here. Thanks so much for joining us. And also for our audience, thank you for being here. This session will be recorded, so you also can watch it after a while in our webinar library, okay? So this webinar will not take more than 1 hour. We will have the discussion with our panelists first, and then we will open for a Q&A. If you at home would like to send the questions, please do it at any time here in our Q&A session tool here on Zoom, okay? So let's start it. The devil is in the data, says our introduction video, showing a few examples on how data can be and has been used in fashion. Since the trickle-down of fashion trends, the understanding of the market, to the couture creation process, it's all data. As much as we think of fashion as something intuitive, it has always required a great deal of knowledge. Names like Coco Chanel and Yves Saint Laurent changed the status quo of fashion and culture with a deep understanding of economical, political, and social movements at their times. Is it possible today, in a global fashion market of 1.5 trillion of US dollars, which is calculated to rise to 2 trillion by 2026, there is no room for mistakes in our highly competitive market. But is data only about that? It's only about hitting the target. When you have creative decisions to make, is data a friend or foe? To help us take this issue to a higher level, I would like to address the first question in the session to Julie Pont. As a fashion designer, Julie, how do you see data helping the design process from the early beginning, since the research and inspiration phase, to reaching the right market? What are the benefits and what can be improved?
Oh, it's a very wide question. When I started at Heuritech, I was really a bit scared, to be honest, as a creative, with my creative background. I was really scared about the data and what could really imply for my job and people that are actually at the same. And I was like super dubitative about what could really be the added value of data whenever you were always operating on a gut feeling and you really know that your instinct and your creative path is the best thing you have to sell, and this is why you've been hired. So I remember having a long conversation with our CEO, Tony Pinville, and he finally convinced me that he was not here to actually replace people that are creative or designers at all. They were really inventing something to help them going through uncertainty, and also it's data for Heuritech is also a way to convince other people that rely on data and rely on math and numbers and figures to take decisions. So I see data today first as a way to save time, because as a creative person today, you have to take into account so much sources of inspiration, and you have so much demand from your customers, from the brand you're operating for your market and everything. So it's, I remember when I was in studios, it was a long process to actually go through Instagram and Pinterest and other social media, and to be sure that we're not going to miss anything that could be super pleased for our customers. And it was really I felt that it was not really my place to actually operate in this kind of researches, because I was not on the marketing team and I really wanted to be creative. So I remember looking for endless researches that were not related directly to the creation process, because I was not into books or movies or going in stores, vintage stores, especially because I really love to do it and go searching for new inspiration in the past. So I remember me on Instagram saying, okay, I'm just copying something that is already existing. So I see an opportunity into data to actually leave behind this long process of competition analysis, and also what has been already done. And also, I remember the frustration I felt when I was discussing with people from marketing or from merchandising that were actually relying on numbers that were from the past, the past sales, what have been during the last season, been the best sold garments, or what were the big successes in terms of production. I was like, yeah, sure, it's been a big, great success last summer, but maybe we should bet on something different for next season. And I had nothing to rely on except my gut feeling. And it was super frustrating that at the end of the day, it was always the marketing and the merchandising that had the last final word, because they had the numbers and the figures to actually prove that it was something that they could rely on and something that was safe in terms of financial opportunities. So to me, as a fashion designer, now I rely on data just to securize my creative decision, not in a way that I will cancel a design because it's not going to have the best figures, but because it gives me some insight about where I'm standing in terms of trends. For instance, sometimes you feel that you are at the very edge of the trends, very early signals, and if you really look closer, you're just following the past of the manis. And I feel it's a pity because you're not creative anymore when you're copying your neighbors, even if it's not volunteer. And I actually really like when one of our clients, a designer client, is actually saying to us, yes, I had the final words and I could launch this very specific design because thanks to your data. It's really a great success for me, and I'm very pleased about this, because actually you can say my gut feeling is backed with the very early signals data, and this is something that was not really happening when I was in studios 7 years ago.
And just for the ones maybe who are not familiarized with Heuritech, can you explain a little bit what's your data and how do you do with your data?
Yeah, sorry, I dropped into the subject like everyone was aware, but Heuritech is an agency, operates in an agency with the platform that allows our clients to actually operate on data that we're crawling from social media mainly, but also get image and other sources of images, because Tony, our CEO, developed it as a PhD in machine learning and deep learning, is a technology that allows some artificial intelligence to read images, to be very simple in the explanation. So we are passing our modules and AI modules through millions of images on social media, and it allows us to actually read early signals and data streamline, and also how different trends are operating on different markets. For instance, if you're interested to know what are the best trends in the US, we are able to actually give you some insight about this, because we rely on pictures that are posted on social media in the US. And we also, of course, analyzing all the fashion shows, industry stars, that it's a good way for us to forecast a bit what can happen in the future. And we are not relying only on human intuition, of course, because we have, on top of this AI that is able to read the pictures, algorithms that are able to forecast the behavior of the trends. So this is a very powerful tool, because whenever you are familiar with, you can really use it to back your intuition and to basically operate with difficult decision. For instance, you can be a very creative designer in Europe, and because you know your culture, your market, and you're supposed to successful, because this is something it's easy going for you. Maybe you're going to be super cool also with North America, because we were kind of from the same background. But when it comes to understanding the Brazilian market or the Chinese market, there is some issue related to the cultures, difference between colors, tones, skin tones, and also what actually people are wearing there and like there. And this is very difficult for brands to actually deeply understand it, because they can't hire, a designer per geography. and we allow them to better understand the market with the very precise recommendation on trends on different geography.
Great, thank you, Julie. And this also leads me to the question for to Beth. Thinking about the consumer experience, exactly what Julie was talking about, but what are the benefits of data in increasing the consumer experience? How is this changing retail solutions and consequently the consumer behavior?
Yeah, this is a big one. And I feel like if you kind of look at it through the lens of like data being information at a high level, you can kind of say that more data allows us to make more intentional product. But it kind of depends. In the past, we've produced things before people want them, before they buy them. And I think that's worked really well when trends are very clear. And you know, there's a certain color that everyone's wearing, and you can predict things more easily. Now, trends are all over the place because of the amount of information and data that we're overloaded by. This is kind of a question for Julia, but with, you know, are there more trends now? Are trends messier than they used to be? It kind of feels like they are. They're more overlapping. They're changing more constantly. At least, yeah, from my perspective, and I'm not as deeply embedded in that. But if you look at it from the lens of being able to make things specifically for people and for capturing as much information as you can about the person that you're producing for, then it becomes very, very clear that the more data, the more information you can get on that person, the more intentional the product is going to be. And so that's something that little intro to Unspun, that's something that we're able to think about because we're attempting to flip and start with the customer and then produce a product for them. So customer gets a body scan, chooses the design that they want, and then we make the product for them. Of course, there's a question on like, does the customer always know exactly what they want? And there's a question of, you know, is bad data useful, or it's more harmful than anything, garbage in, garbage out kind of situation. And so we have to sift through that. With a body scan, we're pretty confident that that's going to be good. There's not much someone can do to mess that up. But if they tell us, no, I like to wear my jeans at this spot, or I like this kind of look, they don't always know. They can't really predict it. And so something that we have to kind of collect over time and we put into our algorithms and using machine learning is how this has worked for other people in the past. And so we kind of build that way, but that leads to issues with, you know, are we working bias? Is there bias in this based on like how we've kind of divvied up people and categorized people? So I think, you know, in general, the more data, the more intentional the product, the better it's going to be. For the customer, I like to think that it's making things easier because they won't have to, you know, go through sizes anymore. Sizes won't be a thing. And we won't have to ask someone what kind of inseam length they have or what their waist is, which honestly, if you look at the correlation, someone says they have a 34, it's actually, you know, the store, it's actually a 36, like they don't actually line up. And so there's even a mismatch in the data that is presented to us as a consumer on the sizes, let alone, I mean, there's that whole back end on where the product is coming from. That gets really messy as well. But yeah, I guess to answer your question, I hope that it's making it easier for customers because it'll allow them to you know, scan or get something made exactly for them without actually having to think about it ahead of time.
Exactly. And talking about making easier for the customers, Jonathan, how can we use technologies such as emotional recognition in fashion? And is that possible? And what are the implications of this using in the creative process of fashion design?
Wow, that's quite a broad question. Livia, you can answer it in a number of different ways. I mean, I guess, well, I mean, I guess the kind of first caveat is just, you know, we would come at this from a Holition point of view. We're not data scientists. We build a lot of AI, but we're a creative technology agency, and our sort of our operation is really about telling stories and using digital as a way to communicate, particularly to communicate I mean, I'm very interested in technology that helps us to understand more about what it means to be human. And then we'll do that for brands like Louis Vuitton or Chanel, and we'll do that through fashion shows. We'll do that through augmented reality or pop-up spaces or in-store activations. Increasingly, we do a lot of it in the art world because, what is a brand but a collection of stories to be told? And in the new digital world, it's stories about everything. That's not just about product and design, but it's about culture and art, and it's about their views on sustainability and ethics and their views on gender and diversity, and all of these are stories to be told, and digital is a very interesting way to tell those stories. And of course, data is a very interesting way to tell stories too. So we do quite a lot of work in data and explanation of trend and things such as that, but we do it more in terms of broad insights rather than the kind of granular 72% of people like this or that. And I think, and one of the things that we have been working on for sort of, I don't know, 8 or 9 years now is thinking more about emotion in, let's call it personalization or understanding consumers. I mean, I think we've all been we at Holition have always been very frustrated as we've worked with brands perhaps on more the front end of sort of e-commerce problems and issues that they have, that the sort of classic Amazon route of you bought those trousers, so here's another pair of trousers, or you bought something in red, so here's something else in red that you might like. We kind of feel that in some ways that's sort of turning the telescope round and looking down it and turning it into a microscope. We're kind of channeling down, and I can always feel that there is a massive sense of irony with algorithms that actually we have with the internet. We have kind of an infinite breadth and expanse of information and data that we have access to, but algorithms are funneling us down into kind of areas where it thinks we might be more interested in, and removing areas that are kind of less interesting to us, and in some ways they're kind of pushing us into the middle of the bell curve, where kind of you take all the colors and you mix them all together and you end up with kind of gray, and so it's almost trying to find out what is the kind of the sort of average like, and then gravitating you towards kind of that. But that's not human, is it? That's not us. And that's not the way we are. I mean, we all dress differently, we all behave differently, we all talk differently, we all like different things. And the more people try and say, I'm targeting millennials, or I'm targeting Gen Y, or I'm trying to target, sort of British XYZ. And I kind of feel, well, that's not digital, is it? Digital, I remember one of the first projects we did for ASOS, and they were saying that, and this was like 12 years ago now, but they were saying that they could identify 35,000 individual customer groups. They had no idea what to do with all of those groups, but they could identify individual groups. And I'm an old-fashioned sort of analog luxury marketing director by training, and I used to look at the whole world in A, B, C1, C2, Ds, and Es, and there they had this kind of huge granular technology. And I think what I like is actually looking at the kind of dark space and actually recognizing that different people behave and have different likes at different times. I mean, almost the very first retail tech project that I saw, which was not one that we did, but it is such a basic one, but it's, and I'm sure everyone knows about it, but CNA in Brazil, they did something on Facebook likes where the number of likes on the product will be transmitted into the hanger or their little digital readout. So when you went into a store, you could see what people were liking. And it was one of those first kind of things to try and take digital desire and transmit that into sort of physical product. And what I thought was interesting is that, and this is from a sort of human point of view, that if you walk into a shop and you see that jacket, 10,000 people like it, but that jacket, only 2 people like it. Well, using the algorithms, a brand would probably push people towards the 10,000, but there are going to be people that don't want to walk into a room and see everybody wearing the same thing. So in fact, the algorithm should work the opposite way and actually recognize that individuality and push them towards the more unusual bit. And as humans, we explore. So I'm interested. We've always been interested in how almost you can shove some sand in the data so that it actually pushes you into an area, so that using the Amazon model as a kind of view, that you bought those trousers, but here's an incredible book you might like. Or you bought those trousers and you should be trying this particular destination on your next travel. That kind of thing, where like 1 + 1 doesn't equal 2, but it equals 12 or 14 or kind of 28. So I think when we start looking at some of the data work that we do, we're very, very interested in this idea that we as humans are different. And by the way, we're not only different from each other, but we're different at different times of the day, different days of the week. I'm very different on Monday, as my team knows, as they try and avoid me because I'm always grumpy on Monday, and I'm happier on Friday. And, you know, I'm happy when it's sunny, and I'm not that happy when it's pouring with rain or it's kind of cold. And I think if we can recognize, you know, and that's where the emotion comes in. If we can recognize behavior, but also the causes of behavior, and feed all of that into it, but also recognize a propensity to take risk and a propensity to discover, you know, and a propensity to sort of think, right, I want to go up onto that mountaintop there because the view's going to be great. No one's been up there before, but I'm going to go up there. I think that's interesting for me. And I think that that's what digital is all about, just to kind of wrap up my monologue. But because digital is, you know, what is the difference between, you know, what is the impact of digital? And you know, again, that's a big topic, but I kind of feel that the impact on digital is that brands have had to let go control. You know, and when I was a marketing director, brands used to tell women what to wear, how to wear it, and when to wear it. But that behavior just seems crass today. Someone telling you what to wear, that just feels wrong. And actually, trend may come from a brand, and it may come from a designer. And the whole idea of AI is like, what is a designer in the world of AI? You know, if you're thinking about AI and design, what is that role? Is the role of the designer to design, or is it to tweak the algorithm? And is the algorithm a tool to assist design, or is it removing the designer from the design process? I think you know, trend comes from everywhere, and trying to understand where that trend originates and how that trend kind of sort of perforates through fashion, I think is, well, it's something that's beyond AI at the moment. I'm sure it will be coming, but not just looking at behavior, but causes of behavior. I think that's a really interesting area, and it's something that we're looking at a lot at the moment.
Great, thank you, Jonathan. And actually, the next question is also to you, but yeah, take your seat. Sorry, but when we're talking about this amount of information and how we are able to narrow down this channeling and funneling in specific targets, but also we have the issue of regarding data security about that. We have this amount of information about our customers and make it usually use that to benefit our strategies, but we put our customers in a difficult situation in terms of security of data. So how can we address this issue and protect our consumers as well, but using in the best way, creative way and strategical way, creating personalized experience without being invasive?
Well, do you want the good answer or the bad answer? I mean, the
Both.
kind of, yeah, I mean, the sort of glass half full optimistic answer, which is very much kind of where I am, is that, you know, people will respect data. There are laws in place to protect data. I mean, I completely agree with Beth. The more data you have, the richer your data set, the more likely you are to kind of get the insights. And that data can come in a variety of different areas. It can come from behavior, but yes, it can come from physical form and physical tracking. It can come from sort of movements and environmental tracking, and, you know, a whole load of different inputs. And obviously that data taken into you know, taken together as a combination is a very, very, very powerful insight. And that insight can be used for good, or it can be used for kind of bad. I would hope that it's used for good. And as somebody once sort of said to me right at the beginning of all of this data conversation, you know, if it's a benefit to consumers, then it's, you know, the sort of issue is if it's misused or kind of misjudged. But if it's a genuine benefit, then I'm optimistic that consumers will offer up that data. I think it's also an age thing too. I mean, some of the younger kids that work at Holition are far less worried about handing over data because they're just used to it. It's just like what you do, and it's people of my generation that aren't used to handing, you know, that keep everything quite close. That's the way it's always been. I think they feel a little bit less comfortable about handing over this kind of stuff. I mean, what is it? Peter Parker once said, you know, with great power comes great responsibility. I mean, I think it's a question like, do we believe that the people that can hold this data will use it responsibly? I hope the answer is yes. But the glass half empty route is, unfortunately, history is littered with. Well, let me rephrase this. I think one of the things that is most traumatic about big tech is that actually it's not governed by national laws or local laws. It's truly international. And the ability of technology to spread fast far outstrips the ability of regulatory authorities to control and restrict it. I mean, you only have to look at Uber. You know, by the time Uber has you know, they may be fighting lawsuits in one area, but they can just be everywhere. And once it's everywhere, and once everyone is using it, it's very, very difficult to kind of rewind. And so I think, and you know, big tech is about investment and money and returns, and it's about speed. And there's been all sorts of stories about ethics, you know, in large organizations who are absolutely fixated on growth and perhaps have less interest in the needs of their consumers. So I think maybe the answer to your question is we're just going to have to wait and see. I would hope, and by the way, I can see a whole new raft of highly responsible creators of startups. You know, the early days were all about growth and size, and there's a whole generation of startups, and I'm sure Beth and Julie will hopefully concur and be these people that are not starting up to make money. They're starting up to do good, you know, starting up to help people or to help fashion or to make the world a better place. And I think that generation, hopefully, are the ones that we can entrust the kind of question that you posed.
Thank you. And Beth and Julie, do you want to add something on that?
Well, I can, yeah, I totally agree with the postulate saying that we need now we are no longer just here to create a company to make money, but really to improve the situation with the fashion industry. And the last report we get from the, I don't know how to say in English, but GIEC is really alarming. And as a fashion designer and part of the technological company, it was like really alarmed. I was like, what's the point actually to try to operate and to find a new way to produce better, to be more sustainable, and also to be able to find a new way and new scenarios about how we could produce better products and better clothes with data, and to make technology no longer the problem, but maybe a part of the solution. Because I do believe that is not the entire solution, of course. And I think the education and how to consider clothes is really the part of what's super important about this, is to really reconsider clothing and fashion no longer just as something fun and something to entertain yourself, but something that is actually as much important as maybe what you put into your body is food. And I do make the parallel with my students whenever it comes to subject about sustainability. It was like, think about, actually in France, think about 10 years ago in France, we were not really concerned about how we eat, and it started in school, learning how to make better meals and to choose the right vegetables with the right seasons and everything. So as a little girl, I actually understood the importance of being careful and to go with the seasons and everything, but I didn't receive the same with clothes. And I think maybe data and technology at large and a different mindset and different education can maybe improve what Jonathan was talking about in terms of situation.
Exactly. Thank you, Julie. And also just remembering our participants that you can send the questions to our Q&A, and we will talk in around 20 minutes, 15 minutes. We'll be reaching your questions, okay? So continue the issue about how technology can help us to improve the fashion industry. Beth, what do you believe is the role of technologies such as blockchain in this sphere? Could the blockchain help the fashion industry to protect their data, for instance?
Yeah, so I'm actually no blockchain expert, but I definitely see the benefits of it, and we've been using it a little bit in our products as well. We've partnered with Eon, and we put RFID and QR codes into our products so that they can be more traceable and more transparent. I think it's just unfortunate that we're at that point in our industry, and we've been there for 40 years now, where we have no idea where the product is coming from that we receive. We're so far removed from not only the manufacturing, but even like the source of the fiber. Did it grow on a farm? Was it extruded in a polymer factory somewhere? We don't know. And it's just so easy to go on with our lives and just listen to the greenwashing that's presented to us. We don't have time to really dig into that. It shouldn't be expected that consumers can do that, because honestly, brands can't even find out where their blended yarns and fibers are coming from at the beginning of the supply chain. It's just too convoluted to really trace without something like blockchain that's much more reliable. I don't know the really, really deep technical aspects of it, but I'm told that it's very, very reliable. And so I think that's a promising thing for our industry, that we can start to know more about the history of the products that we use. And then as we get into more recycling, which recycling really isn't a thing yet in the industry, it's a term that's tossed around a lot. There is downcycling. There's a bit of like a spiral before it gets to landfill or is incinerated. But eventually when we get to recycling, it'll be really neat to kind of capture those stories of where your product, where the material that you've used before, kind of that reincarnation of it over time, I think will be really beautiful to see. So I have really high hopes for blockchain. I think that in terms of like people's data and protecting it, I imagine it would help. I don't really know. I think that what's really good is that right now people are starting to, even though there is more and more data collected on us, we're starting to own it more than we used to, and are at the point where we can actually erase data. So since we work in Europe and GDPR is definitely a thing that we adhere to, we do have consumers coming back to us and asking to delete it. But funny enough, it's mostly people in the US who are asking us to delete it more than people in Europe. And that's not just because of our market, but it's more that I think there's a little more trust in Europe because of the policies in place. And I think because California does have a really good policy, but the rest of the country doesn't. And so I think people aren't as trusting. And I think once those policies kind of come into play, then they'll trust the data that they have because they'll own it and they'll be able to control it. So I think blockchain is a great thing, but I think it has a ways to go.
But just to explain it a bit to the audience, how do you use the blockchain on Unspan? You explained it a little bit, but I want to know better about the steps.
It's more that the customer can basically scan in. So they receive a pair of jeans, and to get their jeans, they do a body scan, and then they choose their design. And there are a number of different things they choose to design their jeans. Those go through algorithms that give us their pattern. We then make that MOQ of one pant for that customer. And so they can kind of follow those steps within the jeans that they scan. So they'll scan a QR code, they can see what the process was behind making their jeans, can see where it was made, and then they can also see where the materials came from. I think over time, what's going to be really cool is we'll be able to embed with video and like meet the person who sewed your jeans. And we're also working on, I had mentioned, on demand. So we're building a 3D weaving machine because we want to be able to actually make on demand and not have to do such manual labor to create products. And we think, in addition to being able to see behind the scenes, it would be nice to actually bring the manufacturing to the customer and to have them experience that again. It's not 3D weaving is not necessarily how clothes are made today, but it will, I think, help consumers to appreciate the background of their products and see the value in it, that t-shirts should be worth more than $5.
Yeah, exactly. So it's a way of course, you're using data a lot in the whole process, but can I say that it's in a smart way?
I like to think so, yes.
Okay, so now back to Julie, who is also using data in a very, very smart way. AI tools are becoming more popular and easy to use. Do you believe this could help and inspire designers to create more competitive collections and reach different markets? Or how can young designers use the new technologies in terms to achieve the decentralization of the industry?
Oh, I wouldn't say that AI is really easy to use or to create. Actually, to operate on this is really a complicated process, and I can really I can't really record because basically I have to deal with our research and development team on a daily basis. And first of all, finding the right language and to actually operate together, because they are with engineer background and a very technological background. So to make them understand the very importance of this tiny little detail that is a world to you, because it makes all difference between this trend and this product from this one, this is the first major challenge for a creative one talking to a digital or tech one, because this is the main issue that young designer might meet to be very French speaking. But yeah, this is the first step, is to find a way to translate your creative ideas and to make them understand what you're looking for. This is the first issue. And as I have to say that a good AI is a good trained AI. So the more you are able to actually make your AI super accurate for the jobs you are operating to, if you're training an AI and you're an engineer and you are super keen to have a very good idea for the deep learning and everything, it's fine. But when it comes to something that is super specific to the design process or the merchandising process, you really have to understand the people that are in front of you and to really understand their jobs. So this is the main, to me, today the AI is everywhere, everyone is talking about it, but it's really, really rare to actually find a company or even a scientist or even a designer that actually understand both sides of this, because AI is not simple. It's something that is simple to explain, but actually to train modules and to make it operational for such complicated industries, fashion, it's a very, very long process. But it is also a great opportunity for designers, because as I mentioned before, it's a way to understand the market. It's a way to maybe increase their process speed and to be sure that you're super reactive to something that can pop on your market, pop in terms of trends, and to not to replace you, but to empower you in a different way, and to make you, more omniscient, more able to actually analyze more data. And by data, for a designer, I would speak only about pictures, because inspiration and the way we were creating is a lot to deal with the pictures. And today pictures are everywhere, and you can super overwhelmed with the amount of data you can get from magazines, from websites, from social media, especially. So for young designers, I would say that artificial intelligence is a way to pick and to choose really your creative atmosphere, your creative universe, and how you want to speak to the world, because you are not submitted to the amount of big data in terms of images, and you're sure that you're going through all this inspiration with something that you're sure it's really fitted for you and really designed for you. I'm not sure I'm clear, but it's really how to make your choices in this ocean of inspiration and possibilities, because when you're a young designer, especially, you want to prove yourself that you're super creative, that you want to create the next big thing, the next big collection. But sometimes being a good designer is also be attentive and to really understand the people you want to talk to. And AI, in my opinion, is not here to actually replace the designers and to design instead of him or her. Is really to help him to make some choices and to go through this amount of data and monetization, and to better understand cultures and to be more accurate in their creative path. So I'm not sure I'm covering the entire question because it was a very long one, but I can.
No, precisely. It was great. So we are close to the end of our session, and I have a few questions for us, to all of us, for a small Q&A. So I will start with one. Since that we have three different parts of the supply chain fashion here, I would like to ask for the three of you. Do you believe that the current fashion supply chain is ready to work with this level of precision that data offers?
Well, I can tell you about our experience at Unspun, and we because we have MOQs of 1, it does take a certain kind of production facility to take us on. And we always end up starting with a sampling room and trying to kind of replicate what a production line would look like, but kind of through the lens of a sampling room. And the challenges for us are that every single pattern is unique. So you have to lay out 1 layer of fabric and cut that. And then also usually the thread color is different on different ones. So you kind of have to batch it by thread color, but that becomes something that you change. Otherwise, because we're doing jeans, it's a lot of the same construction. You can set up a nice production line that way. That being said, like I still think automation is going to be the final answer for getting us to the precision that we're talking about here. With every single, like we're kind of talking about every single product being its own thing. So more than just a pair of jeans, it's a different pattern. Instead, a completely unique product that is a different pattern. And so that's going to require something more akin to 3D printing. And that's why we're chasing 3D weaving, but 3D knitting could come into play as well for anyone who unlocks robotics and cut and sew, which is incredibly hard and I think very far away. But once that's done, like that can be another way as well to kind of create one-off products. And I think automation, because of how expensive production is the way to achieve that.
I mean, from our side, we're a creative studio, so we're not rational. We're far more ethereal, and we haven't got the skills to answer questions. We just try and pose them. So I think but I mean, I think that posing the questions is perhaps not as important as answering them, but maybe as important as answering them. I'm thinking of a piece of, and I think data can be a really interesting way of arming people with information that allows them to get into debates. And I'm thinking particularly of a fashion project that we did, not for a fashion brand, but for the United Nations, around the movement of refugees, around the refugee crisis, and trying to bring awareness of refugees. And we built a dress that actually was made out of a UNHCR tent that we took out of a camp in Jordan that had housed Syrian families but had been damaged by storms and was about to be pulped. And with Professor Helen Story, who's a professor of sustainable fashion at the London College of Fashion, we hooked it into UN gave us data feeds, and 7 seconds after a refugee registered for asylum in a country, a dot, using pixie magic, a dot appeared at the hem. And then all of these dots, and there were on average 42,500 dots, 42,500 refugees every day registering for asylum, all moved up the dress, and the dress filled up with on average 42,500 stitches or weaves of different colors according to the countries where they were going to. And she kind of went on a bit, and we call it a she sort of went on a tour all over the place and into the UN headquarters, and she was a centerpiece of big data at the Science Museum. And we reconfigured the visualization to take every single piece of data that the dress had absorbed and show huge great data flows from the continent where the refugee had started their journey to the country in Europe where they ended it. And there were 67.8 million journeys were registered and being shown every minute. And I remember sort of looking at it when we put it in and just holding back and seeing two members of the public who didn't know each other looking at it and seeing the same data but getting very different insights out of it. And one person saw it as evidence of a swarm or a horde or a mass of people coming in and disrupting their lives, and we needed borders and controls and barriers. And another person looking at it from the opposite view and thinking that we sort of have an obligation as human beings to help our fellow citizens. And I think that's interesting. That's very, very interesting. And I think we also did a project for Victoria Beckham, which is similar to the one that you were talking about, Julie, where we were basically using something that we built for the beauty industry to constantly scrape social media images and then work out colors and textures and fashion, but not in a rational way. We were literally putting whatever was the color and the fashion second by second by second by second by second by second all the way along. And I think what was really interesting for me was having a kind of being able to build a fast forward into it so that you could compress and speed up. And it was really fascinating to see what people were talking about in the West, and then the colors changing as you went into Asia or then into the States and then back into Europe. And if you speeded it up, you could really the human eye has got an amazing ability to kind of assess millions and millions of bits of data. You could really start to get a sense of what's trending where. Now, going back to the beginning of this, does that mean that we build fashion that fits into that? Or does that mean that we find fashion that, you know, that fits into the troughs and the kind of peaks? Do we mimic, or do we try and do something different? And again, that's where the designer comes in, and that's where the AI can't help you.
Exactly. And this leads us to another question. That we received that question by email. It's from one of our former students, Ian Tep, and he sent us a question about what challenges and issues can arise from implementing AI in fashion design process and practices. And Jonathan was saying one actually not a challenge or issue, like a very good opportunity for implementing on the practices. But from the other side, what do you think will be challenges and issues? Julie already talked about us how difficult can be machine learning and AI to operate. This is the main issue, or should we be looking to more opportunities around that?
Maybe I can start because I see also a big issue with the AI and the fantasy believing that we can automatize any design process. And I'm thinking especially with the fast fashion industry. You mentioned in your email, Livia, the Shein process, Shein company process that included AI that basically, I'm not sure about their processes, but it feels like it's run without anyone controlling them. So launching new products on a daily basis, maybe on an hour basis, without any correlation with the very need of a market and the very need of the people. So it's kind of a crazy machine going by itself without any purpose than just making more money and more profit and more money and more profit, destroying people, planets, and everything. So maybe to me, this is it's a bit excessive, but the evil AI, like something running out any kind of rules or any kind of rationality. So to me, this is the biggest threat to the designer profession in itself, because we could disappear if design is only about putting together things that are trendy and to make new products without any human intention or any human gut feeling or any human intelligence, to be honest, it's a huge threat. And this is something that could be real if people just forget that what is the very soul of human being is its brain, and actually what we are able to create with it. But I feel that some people are super keen to actually automatize everything without any moment where you step back a bit and say, do we actually need to produce so much more clothes? Is it really our DNA to actually produce this? Or this country really need this design because it's not very accurate with their culture, with any needs in at the end of the day? So to me, this is the biggest threat. And I'm super afraid of this, actually.
Yeah, I would agree with Julie. That's probably the biggest one. I think one that's a little bit lesser, but still a concern for us is that AI kind of perpetuates some of the issues we have with our own psychology and our own brain. And this, because of the way it's designed, and it's all about learning and doing things over again and categorizing. And so something that we always have to take into account, since we have our AI and we have machine learning that feeds back information that we are always receiving about our algorithms and the fit of our genes and the preferences that people have, is that we then start to discriminate. Because you might say a female who's in her 60s and lives in this part of the world always likes X. It's like, well, that's just going to put someone in a box. And so we have to, that's a big challenge that we can't answer, but we can always be asking that question to ourselves. It's like, are we getting there? And I think that's the first step. Like, what's the next step after that is sort of where we're at. And hopefully, the machine learning also will help us to understand where we are discriminating. But like Julie was saying, like the AI can just run away at some point too. Like, when do we lose control? So I think that's another concern of ours, in addition to kind of the robots taking over.
I think we also need to recognize that AI is it's an algorithm. It isn't a sentient being. It isn't the Oracle of Delphi. that always has the right answer automatically. It's more like the great and magnificent Oz, isn't it? It's mankind controlling and pulling levers, and I guess what I'm saying is that it is what you teach it, and it is what you show it, and you can direct it in certain areas, and you can direct it in a completely different path by restricting information and only showing it other types of information. So, ultimately it's human made, it's human constructed, and like a child becoming an adolescent, it thrives on data and information, and it learns from that data. So it really depends on what data goes in. Absolutely dramatically influences the data that comes out.
Thank you, Jonathan. And we have 5 more minutes, so I will address a question that came from our Q&A here. And it's related to sustainability. So maybe Judy, who brought this topic here, can answer it. Do any brands have mechanisms to buy back the products and recycle the same to be more sustainable? Or maybe Beth can help us with that.
I have 2 examples of company that actually implement kind of the third life of clothes, but maybe Beth, you're the best to answer this question, because today it's very complicated. It's more about logistic. But the demand planning and the forecast of trends really help on this field, because the more you're able to plan and the more you're able to forecast your products, the less you have leftovers and dead stock. So this is something that we actually observe with our clients, and we are starting to have some ROI about the past sales and how using AI and algorithm to forecast trends help them to have less unsold products. But the big challenge is also to re-include in your collection your past collections. So in France, there is 2 startups that are starting to use this and to propose to other brands to implement e-commerce website to resell past collection and archives. They are called Foam and Reflent. So I encourage you to go to see what they are proposing. But Beth, maybe you have better example and explanation.
I mean, I think it's great that you're going right to the source of the problem rather than the Band-Aid. So I think that's even better. I have a lot of opinions about recycling. I think we're going to get there. I think there's so many amazing people working on this. Right now, it's definitely a Band-Aid solution. There's a lot of greenwashing, a lot of take back programs, and we'll take your stuff and we'll throw it away for you. For us, we have a Band-Aid solution right now, which is sending our jeans to Blue Jeans Gone Green by Cotton Inc. They put jeans into walls as insulation. Cotton's not the best insulation, but I mean, I guess it's better than landfill. Hopefully, when that building gets destroyed, and we'll have recycling at that point. But right now, as you recycle, either your fibers are getting shorter mechanically, or the polymer chains are getting shorter from a chemistry standpoint. So there are only so many lives. The best products really are made, like for recycling, are aluminum, and you only get 8 lives from that. So how many can you really get from polymers, from plastics? 2. And if you're going from from a water bottle to a textile, you're already downcycling it, and it's never going to go back to a water bottle. So we're not at recycling yet, and I think that's going to be a huge problem. We're looking at it from the yarn perspective. Can we reuse yarn over and over again? And I think it's a fun thing to think about. So that's why we're kind of focused on it. But I think it's going to be a lot of things coming together, and maybe it'll be biodegrading at the end of the day. That's what nature does. So yeah, no true answers other than there's a lot of work going into it.
And also learning from data from nature. And learning how to do. So we are reaching the end of our webinar. So Jonathan, Julie, and Beth, do you want to add something? Final words?
I would just add something that I said to my students also: don't be afraid of AI or no technologies, just learn how to handle it and to master it, so you won't be the slave, you will be the master. Because when I started at Heuritech, I was a designer and I was super afraid of the technology. I was really tech enthusiastic, but I was like genuinely interested in it, not really into it. But the more I went into it and the more I actually learned how to use it, the more I understood how powerful you are when you basically understand something. You do not need to know how to code or to actually do it by yourself, but be able to exchange and to talk to people that are actually doing those things and to help them to train an AI is maybe the best thing you can do as a designer to secure your future and to be completely peaceful with this, because you know what you're talking about and you're not afraid anymore.
Great advice. Thank you, Julie.
To build off of what Julie said, I think, to be the master of data is to really know what data to collect in the first place, because the world is abundant with it. We all know that, but to be able to make the best use of it is to know what to ignore and to know what noise to ignore. And so just being really, really intentional about what you are looking for and what you collect.
Precisely. Thank
you.
I
think from my side, I mean, this is just something, it's very different to what you guys were just saying there, because it's just something that's on our brain, because we're doing a fashion show for a brand at New York Fashion Week, and it's a big metaverse element to it. And I guess I've been quite interested in, a lot of the discussion that we've had today has been about the human relationship with something that is digital, an algorithm, a sort of that kind of oracle idea, and the mistrust or the trust levels that exist between us in terms of data ownership and whether it's telling us the right things or not. And I think one thing I think is very interesting in the work that we're doing in that, I mean, I hate the word metaverse, but there we are, everyone knows what it is. But originally we were seeing quite a lot of people using the metaverse to explore different sides of their personality, different cultures, different ideas. I think, and therefore there was a divergence. But I think what has been really interesting for us over the last couple of months, I think, is to see how actually there's been convergence and people have been exploring, but then they wanted to take what they found in the metaverse back into their real worlds. And in the metaverse, because it's digital, there's a lot more acceptance of digital avatars and digital avatars that have trend recommendation built into them and are looking for more sort of garish and outlandish ideas. And so I think this conversation might feel quite different to a new generation that are sort of embedded in this quasi real unreal world, where we're not having to judge AI and algorithms and recommendations on ourselves, but also on our digital twins, and that might make people feel a little bit different about this.
Precisely. Maybe this is a topic for another webinar, because I'm totally sure this conversation could go on and on for another hour. So thank you so much. And inspired by what you said before, data is not an oracle, so question data all the time. There's not an absolute true on that. So question everything you say. It's like when you're doing research at college, the teacher, the supervisor will ask you, question the given information, ask again the questions, and discover different results. So this is what data can bring to us. Thank you, Beth. Thank you, Julie. Thank you, Jonathan. It was a great 1 hour. And I'm sure this conversation will resonate for all of us and for the participants as well. And you can all watch again or send to friends and family, whatever, when it's on our webinar library in a few days. Thank you so much in behalf of the Digital Fashion Group. Thank you so much, and see you also in the next webinar. Bye-bye. Thank you.